makes up our businesses that are professional service businesses or corporates. And so under the banner of Camberwell Business, we run a number of events each year, and all of our information, I've kind of got a bit of a blow up here. We have the Camberwell shopping website, which is for the sort of public face of the retail centre, the Camberwell Business website, which is where we post these types of events and other events that are being held locally, whether they're council events or other business events. We're more than happy to put them up on our website. And if you register at either of these addresses, you'll just be on our mailing list to receive notification of different events and things as they come up. So it's a great opportunity to do so. We don't bug you. We try to only send them out when we have events coming up, or with the shopping centre when we have a monthly email that goes out. So that's us. And tonight's our third. I think we've got one more before the end of the year, which will be our Christmas event. And we'll have a guest speaker as well, but we also have some balloons or something. So. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you do need to use the bathrooms, they're through the glass door to my left, and there's signs taking right down to the end of the hall, so just so you know. And we will be finishing up with a little bit more networking, and there's clearly quite a bit of food left, so feel free to go back to the tables again shortly. Before we do get started, before I officially introduce Sue, I just want to welcome Adam from Lanyons Partners, who very kindly, as our sponsors tonight, provided the venue, and I think it's only fair to let him have a bit of a say about what Lanyons Partners is all about. Please come up and join us there.
Thanks, Kerry. So firstly, welcome everybody to our new abode. We've only been here 2.5 weeks, and as you can see, we've settled in okay. Just don't ask me where anything is in the kitchen. So Lanyons Partners, for those of you who don't know what we do accounting. We provide accounting, as in tax and business services. We provide financial planning and private wealth advisory, and we provide general insurance. So we can help out in all of those areas. If anyone's interested, more than happy for you to either ring us, touch base in any way, tap me on the shoulder tonight. I just want to welcome you and hand back over to Jenny. Thank you very much.
That's very good. Well, that was very good. Thank you. Okay, so my formal part of the night is to welcome Sue. So welcome, Sue. And I'll do it more formally, but I have to put my glasses on because I did it in tiny print. Many of you already know Sue, as we certainly do as the Trades Association. She's been involved with Camberwell and helping us on events and things for many years. Sue spent 11 years back in Adelaide, where she was originally from, with Westpac Bank, before moving to Melbourne in 1994, and has been consulting, contracting, and running her own enterprises ever since. Sue's been is involved in managing various websites under her banner, and runs courses in the Centre for Adult Education, General Assembly, and RMIT short courses. She regularly speaks at events, workshops, conferences and expos across Australia, and provides consulting services to individuals and businesses. And of course tonight in particular, Sue's here to launch her third book, and I think that's incredibly impressive. When I mentioned the first was launched back in February 2016, the second, which was 120 Ways to Achieve Your Purpose with LinkedIn, and the second was launched in May 2016, which was 120 Ways to Attract the Right Career or Business. And keeping on a theme, the current one is 120 Ways to Market Your Business Hyperlocally, and that's one we're going to be talking about tonight. Please welcome Sue Ellson. I sort of just decided to go. It's always a little bit difficult, I think, to talk about yourself without sort of feeling a bit awkward. So I said to Sue, what about I just ask a couple of quick questions and hopefully allow her to then elaborate and talk to you about things you're here to talk to about tonight. But if you do have something more pertinent, or she brings up a topic that you'd like to elaborate on, feel free to interject, because I think it's no point in me just asking lots of questions, and it'll be a little bit more interactive. You're happy with that, Sue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so just before we kick off, I mean, that 3 books, very impressive.
Thank you.
What was the process like? Was it daunting, tricky, what you imagined?
Well, if you ask my friends, they'll all tell you that it was very stressful. I decided at the end of last year I'd write 3 books, and I really had no idea how much work that was actually going to be. And of course, like many things, you change the goalposts halfway along. And originally I thought I'd be writing 45,000 words, and I ended up writing 80,000 words. And that meant that I had to write 80,000 words 2 more times. So yeah, it's a full-on process. On the other hand, I feel like I've had a lobotomy, because all that content's come out of my head and being sorted and put in a book. Or 3 books. So yeah, and so from that point of view, it's been great. But also, from a business perspective, it's been really good because now the people who can't afford to consult with me have a book, you know, and I can share more information more readily that way. And like just today, I had a request from Adelaide. There's a lady running a workshop on LinkedIn for students at school and talking about how important it is for students to have a LinkedIn profile. So what do? Just copy the chapter out of the book and send it to her, you know. And so it's been a really useful tool for that. And yeah, it's been fun in many ways. Yeah.
There are three distinct topics, but of course, at the end of the day, they're all important aspects of doing business in a modern world. I think we could talk about the other topics, but I know they're there, and Sue has brought some of her books along tonight, and I'm sure if you want to ask specific questions, you can do. But I do want to move on a bit, if we can, to the current book, because that's what interests me, is obviously as part of an association, what we try to encourage the businesses to do is to market themselves anywhere, first and foremost, but very much locally. And one of the problems I guess we have is with the big chain stores having more of a national approach rather than a local area marketing budget or attitude. And so I guess, having said that, a lot of people I think confuse the idea of just because it's a big name, it's a big corporate business, whereas many of them, of course, are franchises. So they are actually local people, often local families operating in their local environment. So without trying to narrow you down to like 20 quick tips, where do we start with that as a topic? Where do we jump into that in terms of thinking about it?
All right. Well, most people are in business to make money. And so if you're going to be marketing your business, you've got to choose things that are going to actually work in your business. So I do an awful lot of stuff online and digitally, and I have a lot of international business. But when I first came to Camberwell, which is when I was working in real estate here back in 2011, which is when I first connected with the association, I went around and I did a lot of networking, and it proved to be very successful. So combining it with the digital component and the real world stuff, it's worked out really well. So in 2012 I set up Camberwell Network to keep people connected, because I found that getting people together works so much better. So, even just tonight, Bernadette and Kim and Melinda and the other Bernadette all seem to know each other, and they've all worked with one another. And when they get to come together, they get to exchange referrals. So with up to 85% of business being done by referral, that's what you can do when you meet in person, when you can't do that, remotely. And I guess one of the frustrations of what I've seen here in Camberwell is you and I have both tried to get people out of their offices and at networking events, and it's tricky, and trying to convince people to do that. So I think this book is more about saying, well, what can we do in the real world that works, and combining that with some of the digital contemporary models as well. So things like entering awards. One of my clients has entered awards for about 4 years now. She was finalist up until I came along, and then she won 3 years in a row. And she's case studied in the book. And the really interesting thing about entering awards is it's been a process for her to identify what she actually does well in her business. And it's like a business audit that she does every year. And then, of course, she has to come up with new ideas for the following year to put in that application. So she's constantly growing her business just by marketing it through an award, plus she's got the status that comes from an award. So that's one way. Another way is through accreditation and certification. So a lot of us who are in service industries can become accredited professionals in a particular area. And if we get that accreditation, we promote that on our websites and we share that information. That's another good way to develop our business and our profile and our value, and support the industry as well. So a lot of what I try and focus on in this book is connection and networking and maintaining relationships and getting people talking to one another again. Fun, food and free events, and so there's a lot of people who are enjoying fun, food and free tonight. And isn't it great that we get to speak after they've eaten, not before? So, it's, these sorts of things are really, really good opportunities. And then you can back it up with technology after the event. But, business is still done through people, and a lot of people at the top end of town, they don't put an ad on Facebook. They pick up the phone, they talk, they meet, they do business, and they're doing the $20 million deals. They're not putting ads on Facebook. mind you, if you want to do ads, you speak to someone like Melinda, who's a certified Google partner, you know. So, you know, there's a lot of people who are seduced into, well, I must do the latest shiny object idea, but the reality is, well, you know, you could waste an awful lot of money. You could have been far better off coming to Camberwell Business Event and meeting 3 people and getting leads, and that would have been far better than a whole advertising campaign. And on the weekend, I ran the first course on search engine optimisation at the CAE, and you know, we were talking about different things, and I said, it's no good generating more traffic to your website if it doesn't convert. You know, if nobody's going to buy what you've got there, what's the point of search engine optimising it and wasting all that money on attracting business? You know, and I've heard people when I go to events talk about, well, before we do that, we have to do this and fix up your website. And so little things like that, you know, a lot of that's talked about in here, and give specific examples. And I even talk about one of my clients who's been in jail for white-collar crime. So I got his permission to include his story in the book. And he's based in Sydney. And so we did everything by phone, and I had to call him Mr. because he's a bit old school. And anyway...
That's a statement, sorry from that.
Yeah. A good old school crook, eh?
Yeah. Well, you know, he had to correct what I wrote, because he said he only started being naughty after he got to the top. You know, he wasn't naughty on the way to the top, he was naughty at the top. And then he was punished. And then he went to jail, and of course he learned how to cook, and, you know, he learned about ethics. And so he actually sees this jail experience as a really good thing for him. And he's managed to recover, you know, from even the worst situation that any of us in business can imagine. And a lot of people, you know, another one of my clients got very nervous. She got a 1-star review on Facebook and rings me up at Sunday night, you know, what do I do about this? You know, and I looked at it and thought, you know, that looks like a stalker wrote it on one of her ex-employees. And sure enough, it turned out it had been a stalker. But, you know, we were able to remove it, and, you know, Facebook deleted the review, and, you know, and if you can cope with a crisis for about 19 hours now, you're pretty much over it. You know?
It's old news, isn't it?
So it's old news. And so, you know, and even this guy who's been in jail, you know, he's back doing corporate advisory work. He discloses it on his LinkedIn profile, that, you know, he's been in jail, what he's learned, how he's overcome it, and, you know, people are taking his advice and paying mega bucks for it. So, you know, it's...
He's notorious.
He's well, yeah, infamous and famous.
Well, he's probably more interesting than some of the other
It's all in the story.
Because it is about building relationships, isn't it? I think we get a bit carried away with, you know, how many leads we've generated is all very important, as you say, but if you're not converting them or taking them to that next stage of building on that conversion, then it's a waste, really, isn't it?
It is. And, you know, another thing I point out is one of the best sources of business is follow-up, you know, like follow-up with all your existing clients before you know, start trying to look for new clients. And then I thought to myself, why is it that people don't follow up? And then I thought, well, no marketing consultant's going to get paid if they say follow up with your existing clients. You're only going to get paid if they promote a new way to attract clients. And so I thought, no, I've got to put this in. You know, that's one of, I like focusing on tips that generate business and actually work. You know, so I've tried to eliminate the things that are just not going to work on an ongoing basis.
Your previous books were quite sort of workshop style, real hands-on, this is how you do it. Is it a similar style? I haven't had a look at it yet because I went straight to the food. I was coming back to that because it is just hot off the presses, I know.
It is, yeah, literally. It arrived on Friday, and I only went to the printers at 2:47 a.m. on Monday. So, yeah, look, it is a lot of that, and very strategic. And although there's 120 ways, I give a lot of information in each spot. So there's probably a lot more than 120 ways. I've actually sort of say 120 summaries of what to do. But I like to try and encourage people to think about, well, how does your business work? You know, what would you do in your business? And how could you apply these to your business? And by sharing some stories, well, obviously it's a bit better than Sue saying, you must do this.
That's right.
It's more about making it a bit more interesting and relevant to people by including that. And my second book was a lot about my personal story of finding work and attracting business and that kind of thing. Whereas this one, I tell just more generic stories. Like one of the stories I talk about is my grandparents. And my dad grew up on Kangaroo Island, they have a guest house over there. And my grandmother was very good at hyperlocal marketing. Very good. So good that we would walk down the main street of Kingscote and it would take like an hour and a half because everybody would stop and want to talk to her and blah, blah, blah. And I used to think, oh, God, when's this ever going to end? You know, but she was very good. She always made sure I had a bag of lollies, you know, from William's shop by the time I got there. And yet my grandfather, he was shocking, you know, because he would go down at 3 o'clock to the post office, to the grocery store, and that was it, you know. And as the grandchild, you know, well, dare I not, you know, interrupt. But my grandmother would do things like she'd listen to people and, you know, she'd talk to them and she'd hear them say, oh, I really love that jam that I had at breakfast. So they'd go out on their tour for the day around Camberwell Island, they'd come back and there'd be a pot of jam sitting at the room, you know. So I happened to bump into this couple, well, I should say it's my ex-parents-in-law, many years later, and I said, oh, my grandparents have a guest house over on Camberwell Island, and oh, we stayed there, and we had this fabulous time at this place, and, you know, we got this pot of jam and, you know, remembered everything about my grandmother. You know, that's hyper-local marketing, you know. And I said, oh, do you remember anything about my grandfather? No. Absolutely nothing about my grandfather. And you could say, well, he wasn't a very good businessman, but he had another aspect to do in the business. So, you know, he made sure it stayed afloat and looked after the books and, you know, everybody hated him, but anyway, you know, it's irrelevant. But, you know, she really had hyperlocal marketing all stitched up, and they had heaps of repeat business year on year on year, and she was well loved in the community, and yeah, I was really inspired by my grandmother in many respects, yeah. And she only died when I was 11, so, you know, like it's you know, to really, to remember that. I think, you know, a lot of these things, I was interviewed by Business Essentials this week for the September edition, Heather Dawson, and she said it's so refreshing to read a book that's not about just going global again, you know, it's about reconnecting with community and you know, I'm a big believer in ethics, you know, and doing what's right and giving back to the community, and yeah, that there's a lot of that in the book.
I think it's actually interesting as the world gets bigger and the internet gets bigger, when there's just so much more information on there that you can get so very easily lost. It does have to come back down to really capturing your local market and then building from there, and of course hoping that people will find you in the old traditional ways that we've talked about before, what you were talking about it before, which was building those relationships and creating some points of difference that people remember and hold on to. So we've got probably more professional service operators here rather than retailers, and that's more my field, which I can see some obvious ways to do it. But in terms of business to business type, I guess marketing locally, and how does it work at that level sort of thing?
What I've focused on here is, one of the things that I do when I teach how to create a WordPress website is to do a competitor analysis, to work out what your competitors are doing, to find out, you know, whether it's good or bad or what's your point of difference. But also what I'm encouraging in the book here is for people to do a complementary analysis. So what other businesses would be aligned and could support you? So if we look at Lanyons Partners, you know, you do accounting and financial services and so on. So those clients, would they love to go travelling? You know, would it be a good relationship for you to have with the local travel agent, and how can you complement and refer to one another? And are there little vouchers that you can give? You know, if you spend over $5,000 in accounting fees, then, you know, we can do something like that. And I went to this pricing workshop as part of the Small Business Festival that's on until the end of August, and the guy said, and this was the accounting practice, and they said, oh, we've decided to change our business model, and from now on we're only going to take on clients that charge $5,000 a year or more. So, you know, they were trying to raise the bar and say, we're just going for these high level clients. So they sent out the message to all their existing clients and said, look, you know, we're only going to be doing it at this rate now, so here's another couple of accounting practices that you might like to go to because, you know, we're not in that space anymore. And they said, oh, no, just keep doing what you're doing, we'll pay.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So they went from 3,000 billing to 5,000 billing because they were appreciative of the service. So there was no need to worry about the competitors at all. You know, it was about they discovered their point of difference and they offer amazing service, and the people love what they receive, and that generates the business. So I'd love to see a lot more complementary type arrangements develop, because I think that where there's more collaboration, because there's a lot more of co-working spaces, there's a lot more of the sharing economy. I talk a lot about business sharing. So for instance, if we think about a recording studio, who on earth in the music industry is up at 9 o'clock in the morning? Nobody would be. So why can't they offer their recording studio to us consultants who want to do some audiobooks, and so we can share their facilities at a time when they're not using them. And these sorts of arrangements would be extremely cost effective, develop relationships. If I turn up at the studio every time, they're reminded that, Sue does LinkedIn or Sue does whatever, and, it leads to more referrals, and so it's more about connecting at the next level. I think we connect at these networking events and say, lovely to see you again, but do we actually go home and do any business with each other? Not always. So, I'd love to see more of that happening, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point that when you think about it, we're all here because, well, not me, but you are. You're all here because you are trying to improve your business. So each one of you is looking for opportunity, and you might just be able to tap into the person next to you or wherever, because you're all here with the same agenda. So I think that's, and it ties back into how important these types of events are, I guess, which is true. So I've asked a few, and I'm conscious that you might have specific questions. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't. I've got others. No, nobody's putting their hand up. They're all thinking about it.
I can see one.
Well,
Okay.
we'll ask just to help.
Okay.
Yes.
David?
Go for it.
So the role of social media in marketing, talking about local marketing, what is that, do you think?
Yeah, I talk about social media marketing
Yep.
because there's a trend towards social commerce, and the idea being that if we just love being on Facebook all day, we might as well click, click, click and keep buying on Facebook. And that worries me because, I'm sick of Facebook already, that I have to be on there. And I think that every business needs to have a presence where there's a target audience. So, and there's a huge audience on Facebook. So, as a starting point, you have to be on Facebook. I also believe you have to be on LinkedIn. Twitter is fading fast. Snapchat is rising tremendously. Instagram is, another version of Facebook because it's owned by Facebook, obviously. So I think as a starting point, you need to have a presence and a good quality presence, and then you have to decide if your target audience is there, then you do what's going to suit your target audience and appeal to that. But if you're really not capable of spending a reasonable amount of time on it and doing something that's reasonably good, then sometimes you're better off not having anything there, than having something that's bad. So if you just, set up a Hootsuite account and blast the same thing across every platform, people can tell it's not authentic, and your audience knows that, why are you giving me business stuff on Facebook? It should be social on Facebook. So you have to tailor it for the audience, you have to tailor it for your target audience. But, you need to think very clearly about who you want to do business with and where are they, and then, provide useful things in that forum. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yep.
I do some marketing for a cluster of predominantly family-owned businesses. I find even their next door neighbours in a cluster of shops, what stops them from talking to each other, in your experience? And how can we encourage them to actually just speak to their next door neighbour who could be the greatest advocate for their business?
Yeah, look, it's a really tough one because I think we've just lost the ability to communicate now, people are terrified of it. My son's the best at it, He's the most resourceful person I've met. If he wants something, he just gets on the phone and keeps calling people until someone says yes, that's what he does. He's very successful at it.
The apple hasn't fallen far from that tree.
But yeah, look, it's interesting. I think if you're responsible for them, then they put the responsibility back on you instead of on themselves.
Now I'm trying to ascertain what's stopping human nature from actually talking to their neighbour.
Oh, probably devices like this,
Right.
where we're all sort of focused on the screen, and we're losing the ability to engage with one another. It's quite frightening, and Yeah, I think you can only try and facilitate it and state the bleeding obvious, you know. Sometimes you just have to force people to do things, and then they suddenly realise, oh, that was actually a good idea. Oh, I think I thought of that, not you. You know, and that's the other frustrating thing about it. Even if you generate that opportunity, people don't necessarily recognise that you've done it even. They just enjoy the benefits of it. But yeah, I don't know. I think our society is just changing. I find that a lot of people will just, I say to them, you know, how should I use a social media platform? Use it as a research tool and then ring someone, you'll get business. But no, they want an SMS or they want an email or they want to do content ads. You know, we're sick of all that, you know. And what's happening with wearable technology that's going to be coming in soon, it's all going to be on our arm, you know, we don't even have to, I just think, you know, humanity is going to be lost.
They don't I think one of the things I struggle most with is that it's the stump speech in the elevator. What's the one thing you can tell your next door neighbours about your own business that they can remember in a nutshell? So if someone says, oh, who's that next door? You know, or down the corridor in a complex like this, for instance, like what's the one nutshell you can say about your own business that...
Yeah, your elevator pitch.
Your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Hello.
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 That's what you need to say.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing to
Yeah,
say.
you say hello and you smile, you know. There's actually a photographer who's done this exercise of photographing the same people with a normal, whatever face they had on and with a smile. And it's amazing how much more, you know, comfortable you feel looking at the person who's smiling. And so, yeah, a lot of people are just staring at screens, you know, their head down. So that, yeah, they don't have that opportunity. So I guess just keep waving a flag, you know, and just keep doing it because there's enough humans left, I hope, for us to keep doing it. And it's definitely worthwhile. It makes life much more interesting and much more enjoyable. And, you know, I'm sick of texts, you know, I want to speak to someone. And particularly when you're in your own business, that's why I've kept up Camberwell Network, because at least once a month I'm speaking to people in real life, you know, and I'm seeing the same people, which is also nice too.
I think it's like most things that there's always a pendulum, you know, like if the pendulum swings too far one way, then it does swing back. And I think that the amount of technology that's come so quickly to us, and we are all ingrained in it, that you actually, it is very refreshing when you can step away from it. And when you get into a forum like this, you're reminded that it's actually quite nice talking to people. And as I said, if you remember that you're looking for business, they're looking for business, or you're all here feeling a little uncomfortable that you don't know somebody else, you put yourself in their shoes. It's much easier than picking up the phone to a stranger, quite frankly. I find that more daunting than in this type of environment. But it is, I think there is a bit of a swing back to people looking for that authentic experience or that connection with people and
Yeah, Chris Riddell spoke at a census function earlier this week, and he's a futurist, and he's talking about colouring books are the new black, you know, like just doing something real is actually the new black. And he's talking very much about everything in the future being based on customer experience. So unless you're meeting the needs of the customer, you're just absolutely not going to be able to cut it in the future. So one of the chapters in the book is talking about, do we design the product or service first, or do we look for the target audience first and then design the product around that? So, you know, that's also going to be a key factor in what's happening in the future. And socially